A lot of our customers really prefer the non-alcoholic options. Not only because it's sweeter, but it's more full-bodied and really good flavors.
Hello, my name is Ria Windcaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world. Bringing us into this here episode 399 of Cider Chat, discussing non-alcohol-based ciders. We're not talking about fresh-pressed apple juice. We're talking about cider, and we would call that NA ciders, non-alcoholic ciders. And that gentleman's name is Johan Sjöstedt, and he is one of the founders of Pomologik, which is based in Sweden. Johan is our featured guest, and we'll be getting to his conversation shortly. But first, we have a wee bit of news from out and about in Ciderville. Before I go any further, I want to remind myself to say hello. Hello to you out there if this is the first time that you are checking out Cider Chat. It is a multimedia platform in that there's a podcast, and with every podcast there are show notes with links to all the different mentions on each episode. So if you're listening along right now and you don't have pen and paper in hand, that's okay. You just need to go to ciderchat.com and try to remember at least the number of the podcast episodes. So this one is 399, and if you want to find out more about Sweden, you could go into the archives at ciderchat.com. There's a whole tab there just for podcasts. And we are quickly approaching one episode away from 400 episodes. You got a whole lot of podcasts to dive into. So Cider Chat has a podcast. It has a YouTube channel with all kinds of things going on there. Instagram account, Cider Chat Ciderville. We're on TikTok occasionally. There's also e-cider news that goes out about once a month or so, and different conversations that are coming across my desk each day. I've been hosting this platform, for 9 years now, which is pretty remarkable in its own right. And then before I started publishing podcast episodes, I was deep into cider, teaching cider making for 17 years, promoting cider as a craft beer writer, something I still do, and trying to get folks to pay attention to cider. And I think it's kind of working, don't you? So I'm really excited about that, excited that you're joining the show. And again, besides just the podcast and ciderchat.com, there's also something called Totally Cider Tours, where I lead cider tours both nationally in the US of A and also internationally. Which reminds me to say to everyone out there who's been listening to this podcast regularly, and hello to all of you. Yes, I see you. I know you. I love getting to know you if I haven't met you yet. I have so much to say about that. Actually, I'm going to digress just for a moment. This was a bit of an whoa moment for me. Whoa in terms of the reach sometimes that Cider Chat has. I've always thought of this podcast as being accessible, something I wanted to have accessible to multi-generations, because I really consider the community of Ciderville to be not just one demographic, but multi-generational, in that I know that it is a farm-based product, and often there might be kids in a car or in a room, or maybe your parents, who knows? Multi-generational is multi-generational, and I guess I was just proving that point recently while in Portland. I met two different couples from different sections of the U.S. One is up in Seattle. Those are the folks at Empirical Cider. Check them out. They're making cider like wine, and they have a peri-pair that is to die for. And the other couple is from Indiana, and they are Slaughter, Orchard, and Cidery. Both couples told me at different times during the course of the couple days at CiderCon that their kids know the We Like Cider song by heart. Oh my God, it blew me away. Well, it blew me away, but I also have to admit that that's exactly what, that song is all about, it's a community. And so, yay. Hi, you guys out there, all the kids out there that sing We Like Cider. At the end of this episode, the full song will be on just for you. And I'm dedicating this episode to all the kids out there in Ciderville, our future torch bearers, the people of the future who will be able to talk about apples in a different light than just a red apple on the teacher's desk. You will be able to sing a song for generations to come. Because, well, why don't we sing it all along? It goes, there's a reason why we do it like this. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There's a reason why we drink it like this. Ba-da-da. There's a reason. Do-do-do. Yeah. All right. I'll save the rest of the song for the end. Anyways, that song I wrote, and it's sung by myself and my cousin Jay. And it was filled with a lot of family love in that song. So thank you so much for sharing that with me, sharing it with your kids. That really fills my cup. And I hope it does to everybody out there in Ciderville. Cider Chat's been around for a while, going into season 9, and its reach, interestingly, is pretty far and wide. I guess that's what you get for doing consistent content every single week. Whether people like it or not, it's here showing up at your doorstep every week. So make sure to subscribe. We just have a ton of fun out there in Ciderville. And thanks for giving me the time today to share that little wow moment with all of you out there in Ciderville. Coming up in September of 2024 is the French Cider Tour to Paris, Normandy, and Brittany. And I've been talking about this for a couple weeks now, and I want to make an announcement that there are now only 4 spots left on this French Cider Tour. It's a 7-night tour. We meet in Paris and then head out first to Pays d'Auge, which is the Route du Cidre in Normandy. And our first night, we're having a cider dinner with Aguette Laitier. That's after already we've met with Antoine Marot at Domaine Marot. You will be able to find his ciders in different select stores and even in the US of A. And also Etienne Dupont of Domaine Dupont. He is a friend of mine and a friend of yours too. If you've ever tried French ciders, it's pretty much guaranteed that you have probably been able to set your eyes on Domaine Dupont. Now, I know meeting 3 cider makers on day 1 after driving all the way up from Paris might seem like, wow, that's really exhausting. But no. It's not exhausting at all. It's all scheduled and arranged and set up so it's super chill. Of course, you're not driving. We're just enjoying the ride out there with some cider, going to a botanical garden to chill out and have lunch outside, picnicking with, again, cider and some local fromage, some French cheese. And then we have an evening walk where you could just chill out and walk around the stunning, absolutely stunning bucket list town called Honfleur, which is really just spectacular in every kind of French way you can imagine. So I could go on and on. You can find out all the details. Go to ciderchat.com, go to the tab that says Totally Cider Tours, and you'll see the French Cider Tour there. The links are there for the reservations, and 4 spots left. So each week, another spot gets taken up, and I know that this is going to be a sold-out tour. There's no doubt in my mind, and I'm really excited with the complement of people that are already signed up. Wow, from North America. It's a North American trip of folks. So that means Canadians and Americans. That just equates tons of fun. I'm so excited. If you're listening out there in Ciderville, the folks who are already sending your reservations, God, and we're going to have a good time. And I hope if you're listening and you've been sitting on the fence, maybe this will give you that little bit of oomph to get you over to the other side and sign up today. You can find out all the information and more links to reservations by going to ciderchat.com and the Totally Cider tab tour.
Walking through the orchards.
Time once again for the New York International Cider Competition. This year is the 6th annual NYI Cider Competition, and it will be held the first week of April 2024. Top trade buyers, including importers, distributors, retailers, and craft beer bar owners, will be judging the ciders in a blind taste test by its category and the current price of the cider submitted. Ciders are judged by top trade buyers in the industry, as if they were buying for their own business. As a result, cider brands get insider info on how their ciders rate for retail shelves in terms of style, price point, and taste.
Your ciders do not have to be sold in New York or the United States. The New York International Cider Competition is open to all commercially produced ciders from around the world. Winners of this cider competition receive a 2-inch physical medal, a digital image of their medal, and a numerical score.
For more info and registration, go to nyicidercompetition.com and sign up today.
The New York International Cider Competition is a proud sponsor of Cider Chat. Submit your cider today. Go to nyicidercompetition.com, that's nyicidercompetition.com, and help keep cider going up.
Up next is our featured conversation with one of the founders of Pomologik, a cider brand in Sweden. And we're going to be hearing about Johan Sjöstedt, his journey to cider, and also how one may think they're going to be making one kind of cider style, only to find out that it takes a little while to get there, and sometimes there's some other journeys along the way. So let's go next to this chat, and make sure to grab a glass and join Johan Sjöstedt of Pomologik in Sweden.
In 2007, I was studying to be a sommelier. It was a 2-year program, and during that time, you learn not only about wine, you learn about all beverages. If you want to be a knowledgeable sommelier, you should know everything about tea, coffee, and sake, and beer, and cider. And that's probably the first time I came in contact with really good cider. That when I was introduced to Spanish, French, and British cider, that was something I haven't encountered before. Because, I mean, in Sweden, Kopparberg and Rekorderlig are the things that are synonymous with cider. That's what the general population thinks of if we say a cider. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a big eye-opener, and we kind of made you start thinking about it in another way. And that we also started, me and my friends started thinking like, well, we should be able to do this in Sweden. Why don't we have this? We have great apples here, and we're a really good climate for apple growing, so we should be able to do a world-class cider. So after finishing that education, we started dabbling with just fermenting stuff, trying to figure out how can we do fantastic beverages from these apples. And by that time, I worked as a sommelier and a chef for a bit, and worked in the wine industry to different extents. And it wasn't until 2016 that I felt like there might actually be a market for it in Sweden. Because we kind of figured out how we could do a good cider, but I didn't feel like there was a possibility to sell it. I mean, didn't feel like there was an interest for it. Not even the Spanish, French, and British ones, the really good ones, had a market. And 2015, I was on a wine trip. I worked as a wine journalist back then. We were in California, and I came in contact with a lot of the American ciders. I mean, it was Easy Orchards and what's their name again?
In California, or?
No, we were at the Upsider, the bar in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I tried both from Tilted Shed and also, what's the name of that? The one that's...
Easy Orchard is in Oregon.
Yeah, but
and Tilted Shed's in California. I'm just letting listeners know some of the ciders that kind of turned you on to cider. So, and Upsider is a cider bar in San Francisco.
Yeah, but back then it was, for me, it was awesome. And because I never experienced that kind of selection and that many local ciders.
Lovely.
And that was a really cool trip because I was there with a bunch of, because I was working as a wine journalist, and we were there with a team of international wine journalists.
Nice.
And the first night there, we were at Cider. And then the whole trip, everything everybody could talk about was the ciders. How it just blew their minds and how awesome it was and how much fun it was. So the rest of the trip, we went to Napa and Sonoma, but everybody just trying to try some more ciders. Then after that, we kind of decided, yeah, we can do this. And then in 2016, I bought a facility to start making apple juice and cider.
So what about your technique? You had an idea of all these different libations, but the actual fermentation techniques, was that part of your course study prior to it, or did you just kind of jump in and say, well, yeast, natural ferment, or what?
No, it was not. Yeah, you got the basics from winemaking that they teach that, but I was in a really good position because I was fermenting at home, but at this same time I was traveling, meeting winemakers all over the world, so I could discuss with them the problems I had with the fermentation. So it kind of was a good way to get feedback and kind of evolve the cider making at that stage.
Around 2015 or 16, you actually jumped in and started setting up a facility.
Yeah, but in 16 we didn't have any permits for alcohol, and it wasn't until 2017 that we started actually selling cider.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about like the apples there. What's the apple scene, and in terms of varietals that you're able to use?
There's starting to be some, but traditionally there have never been any cider apples. It's just culinary fruit. We have some Danish and Swedish varieties that are commonly grown. Ingrid Marie, Aroma, and Gravensteiner you'll find. And then some other modern ones. Aroma is one of the most common ones. It's developed in Sweden, and you will find it in Denmark and Finland and Norway as well. It does very well in Nordic conditions, and it's a really good apple.
And Gravensteiner sounds a little bit like Gravenstein.
Oh yeah, it's the same one.
Same one. Okay, all right. Just a little bit of variation in language. Okay, and what a wonderful apple that is.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, for eating and the whole 9 yards, baking. Do you have an actual orchard that you're working off of, or are you sourcing your apples from other locations? Or
most of our fruit we source. We have a few trees, but not that much. It's a very small part of our production.
And when you set out with your cider making and your approach to styles, what were you thinking? Okay, I've tasted some amazing ciders out there in the world. What were you thinking? This is a particular style I want to be going for. Did you have that vision out the gate?
Yeah, for sure. When we started out, we just wanted to make like bone dry wine style things, and a lot of barrel maturation, and just trying to do some really wine-like things. That though has changed a lot over time. I mean, that's how we started out, and back then I didn't. I would not expect that we would be in the position we're now and the stuff that we're doing. I mean, now a really large part of our sales is non-alcoholic cider.
Interesting. Wow. What year did that switch over?
We did that from the beginning, but it's more as something that we thought was fun. It was nice to have a few non-alcoholic options, but that part of the market is growing a lot faster than the part with alcohol in it.
And what do you attribute that to? Is that part of the culture there? I mean, we're seeing this also in the U.S., but I'm kind of curious on what's the...
I think the major reason is that the non-alcoholic market is growing rapidly in all of Scandinavia, I'd say. And cider is such a good product because it's not... If you want to do a non-alcoholic wine, you have actually removed a lot of things from it, and you need to intervene in many ways to make it drinkable. But for the cider, I mean, a lot of our customers really prefer the non-alcoholic options. Not only because it's sweeter, but it's more full-bodied and really good flavors that people appreciate.
So I'm going to assume here, maybe I'm right or wrong, but are these sparkling?
Yes.
They're all sparkling. And do you filter before?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's the standard because, yeah, that makes sense. Just for listeners out there in Ciderville, if you're doing non-alcoholic cider at the level that Johan's talking about, you're really going to have a little bit more luck with filtering it than just kind of going raw there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how many different styles of non-alcoholic, or I should say like blends, are you doing? And are you doing single varietal?
Yeah, we do single variety, but those ones are mainly, we also make apple juice. And that.
How do you define that differently?
Oh yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting that there's the language thing here that is cider and hard cider. And cider. So
cider, which is
make,
fermented.
Sparkling fermented non-alcoholic cider, but also make still apple cider, and those ones we're making single varietals.
Okay, and those you don't filter? Or
yeah,
you do,
we filter them.
You filter,
yeah.
okay, all right, just making sure. Would you say the bulk of your sales is on what side of the category? We're
a very mixed portfolio, and we're making a lot of different things. I mean, we have, on the non-alcoholic side, we have a cider that's flavored with birch leaves, for example. So we're just going totally across categories. In these last few years, we've been starting to do more spirits as well.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
We did a batch in the beginning, a pot still that we put in barrels, which we released just last year, because then it was 5 years. So that's what we thought as minimum until we had a really good.
Charred barrels?
No, just the old French wine barrels. So not so much, maybe more on the cognac side of the spectrum in a way.
Yeah. Nice. And is that a blend of specific apples that you're...
That was actually a single varietal. That was an Ingrid Marie as well.
Very interesting. Wow. So non-alcoholic cider and apple brandy.
Yeah, but within the spirits, I should continue that. We also make an apple gin and a apple aquavit.
Apple what?
Aquavit. Aquavit is the traditional schnapps drink.
Yes, yeah, lovely. Okay.
Which most Swedes drink for the big holidays. So it's a must for midsummer, but also for Christmas and Easter.
Are there any sites to expand the product line from there?
Within the spirits? Yeah, for sure. There's a lot to discover on that side, and also mixing it, where I think when we started out, I was much more of a purist. I had a more clear idea. Yeah, this is how it's supposed to be done, and shouldn't be blurring the edges so much. But now I think this year we're going to release a cider that we've added whiskey to, which is something I would never have done like 5 years ago. That would be heresy. But now I'm always curious to try things out, and if it works, if it tastes good, and people will buy it, we'll do it.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that across the board in many countries, being in France and seeing Calvados and port barrels, or in, Scotch, the whole gamut right now for those different flavor profiles. Are you actually pouring whiskey in?
Yeah, we're blending it in, so it's not...
Okay, wow.
We've made a whiskey barrel matured previously, but this one we're just adding whiskey, a chestnut barrel aged whiskey, which is from a really awesome collaboration partner. For me, as long as it's something that I really enjoy to drink, I'm comfortable with releasing it. And at the stage we're at now, people have good confidence in the brand. So I'm not as worried about what people would think of me and the brand as I was previously. So it's a position I enjoy.
It's a learning curve, too, on how to move in this business of cider, isn't it? And the market and how the palate of the customers change. You have to go with it. You have to go with the flow, just like the cider, out of the press. I'm kind of curious about some of your cider making techniques. So let's delve into the yeast. How do you manage the yeast? Are you doing natural yeast, or is it cultured yeast, or a blend of the two?
Again, we do all things across the board. But Most of our stuff is spontaneous, but for some of the products, the ones that we need to have in stock year-round and have pretty much the same profile over the years, those ones we pitch.
Okay.
So the cans and those ones, the big selling cans, those ones which we don't put a vintage on, those ones we pitch.
What are the names of the big selling cans?
Aroma, and that's a single varietal. That one is...
That's a cider now, not an A, non-alcoholic. Yep. Okay. Aroma and...
Ingrid Marie as well.
Ingrid Marie. Okay, wonderful. And what ABV are you getting, which is alcohol by volume?
If we ferment it dry, we usually end up around 6.5, 7. Mm-hmm. But we do quite a lot of back sweetening with juice before canning or bottling.
I see.
So for the big selling products, we are usually at 4.5.
How about the barrel aging? Are you fermenting on the lees? Are you doing any batonnage? What's your rotation there?
Not so much batonnage. We did that in the beginning, but that's mainly due to limited amount of time. I would love to do more of that. Mm-hmm. But these days we don't ferment so much in the barrels anymore. We usually ferment in totes or in stainless before putting it in barrels. Okay. It's just when we do really small batches, because sometimes we have like one tree that's giving us 400 kilos of apples, then all right, let's make a single, not just a single orchard, but a single tree cider. Then we usually ferment it in barrel.
That's special. And do you like celebrate the tree like it's 150 years old type of thing, or is it, branded in that way?
We definitely should, but we don't. But we tell about it on the label and what's the story behind it, and what variety and what year. Yeah. Some of the places that you're sourcing it, are these family farms? Is that how it's done? Orchards, I should say? Yeah, and mainly organic, which... Great, so that's the majority of our production is certified organic.
Very nice. Well, I see that you brought a cider here. Let's try that. And it's a beautiful can, white background with some apple blossoms. It looks like. Is that true?
Yeah, totally right. That's a 250 milliliter. Okay. I don't know what that is in ounces. It's a 3.5 ABV, so it's even more sessionable than 4.5.
Wow.
So we always work with 100% juice. We never add water or sugar to any extent. So if you want to make something that has, for a specific purpose, with a bit more residual sugar, then we will have to go down in ABV. Okay. So this is such an option. So we wanted something that was more off-dry.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's try it here. And I'm sorry for these really fancy cups, but we got moved in our recording studio here today, and we're drinking out of paper cups. But, a good cider can move beyond where it's held and jump out of the glass. So I'm trying to look through the paper here, and just the color, I can't see too much, but it looks, what I could tell, because you have a nice, little head there, it's looks kind of like a nice darker amber is what I'm seeing. And it does pop out of the glass, the aroma, the bouquet, very fruity. It's not overcarbonated. It's just very soothing to the mouth. Oh, now I could see it, like the foam has gone, so I could see the little bubbles. Is this one of your more popular ones, or?
It's not, but that is mainly due to lower ABV.
Right.
Some people want to have an effect out of it. So this is not it, but it's a good seller, and it's a popular one.
Yeah, we would call this ciderkin. It's so interesting, the whole low alcohol piece. It's as if we've gone from one extreme to another. So I'd like to talk to you a bit about that in terms of the cider culture as you're seeing it change in Sweden. When you first started out, and even going back to when you were here in the U.S. tasting it, there was like a aha moment. So what have you seen change over the past 6 years when you...
A lot. Back then, in 2015, it was non-existent in Sweden. You couldn't find it. I mean, Andreas had started by then, So yeah, that's true. I'm lying. Yeah, Andreas was doing his stuff, but he was...
Andreas Sugren of Bronlund Cider is what Johan's referring to.
He was really a pioneer, and he helped me a lot starting out. He was an inspiration and a mentor at the time.
Yeah, that's great, because I did have Andreas on the podcast, put a link in the show notes to that, and, we were talking about ice cider.
Yep.
So we really brought that in. So I'm kind of curious about that. Is that something that you've approached at all?
Because we're making a bit of ice cider as well.
Okay, yeah, good.
Not at the same level as Andreas, but it's something I think is fun, and it's nice to have that option for as a dessert alternative and other things.
It makes a lot of sense too with the apples that you have. It works well with culinary varieties.
But for about where we're at, we don't have access to the same kind of cold as Andreas has.
Oh,
I mean, he's much further up in the country. I think they have like minus 25 Celsius now.
Right. Well, that's going back to being a purist, because there's many folks who do make a nice cider and do it in a deep freeze.
Yeah, that's what we do.
You put it in a freezer versus putting it outside.
We have to put it in the freezer.
Right, yeah.
This year we could have made it outside, but you never know that.
It's a whole different ball game. Yeah, you have to be probably up for like 24 hours, just watching the temperatures flux. And just to give a shout out to Eleanor Leger, because I know she is the ice cider queen, and she helped Andreas learn about it, and so it's kind of like spread it out, like wings. And actually, the whole ice cider technique really came from Canada, up in Quebec. So it's nice how the community kind of gets passed around, and we share our knowledge that way, and which in turn really helps the whole industry grow, doesn't it? So let's get back to your scene in Sweden. What you said, it changed a lot. Who are the drinkers there? Who's coming to your place? And we should also talk about coming to your place too. What does that look like if somebody's traveling to Sweden and they're saying, geez, I want to visit Johan, and can they do that?
Yeah, as a fellow cider producer, for sure. But we're not open to the public, and it's very different in Sweden. We have much more laws regulating things around it. We don't have farm sales that's not allowed. You only have one company that's owned by the government that is allowed to sell alcohol in Sweden for private consumers. So it's a very weird market, and I think we're one of the last communist countries in that regard. I think we have it, Finland has it, and Norway has it, but Sweden is by far the strictest one with not allowing farm sales. I mean, Norway has that, Finland has that, so we're pretty much the last bastion when it comes to that.
That's tough. Is there a guild or the community of cider makers? Is there any way to, and I imagine it's not just for cider, but for beer and, the other producers in those categories, is there any work with the government to make that more accessible, or it's just really locked tight?
There's work being done, but it's going to take time, and we'll see where it lands. But it has moved forward a lot more these last 5 years than it has done the last 100. So I'm positive.
Good.
But but we'll see where it lands.
Yeah. So where is your position in that in Sweden? We were at CiderCon recording here in 2024. There's a whole contingent of folks from Sweden and Norway speaking here at CiderCon. What is your specific role? Are you kind of, and as I know it, and I'm saying this because I kind of know, you've kind of spearheaded a lot of this. Is that true, or am I conjecturing here?
No, in a way you're right. I mean, it is a team effort, but I've been... you asked if there's a guild. There's no real guild, and in Sweden there's no organization around it at all. It's something that we'll have to set up in the near future going forward. But it's still very small. And I mean, the ones that are here now, Brännland, Fruit Stereo, and us, we are the majority of craft cider in Sweden.
How many producers are there in total?
I think it's 40, but within those 40, it's also fruit wine producers and mead producers. and most of the other ones are really small.
Okay. Yeah.
So the three of us are the bigger ones.
Right. Right.
Oh yeah, I should also mention Dryg Cider, which is more recent cideries also here from Skåne. Those are amazing
Right.
ones. They're doing very traditional British style. More.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's spelled D-R. Is that? Am I right?
Yeah.
On that D-R-Y-G. Yeah.
Exactly.
You can follow them on Instagram too. So there's a growing interest in it. People are kind of coming online, like Dryg Cider, and of course what you're doing. You've been doing it for a while. What's your hope? What do you kind of see like the 5-year plan for cider? Because if folks can't come to a tasting room and they're not allowing tasting rooms like a farm cider kind of license, they're going out to the bars, they're going to stores. What kind of stores does it sell in?
It's if you want to buy our stuff, it's just at those government-run
Okay.
shops.
Yeah.
But there's many of those. There are about 400 in Sweden, so you will be able to find one easily. And it's a weird system, but for us, it has been beneficial.
Because
you only get your position there by responding to a tender or getting a limited release. And for us, as a small company trying to buy shelf space at large supermarkets, that would have been impossible. But in the environment we're in, we could actually achieve what we did just because the quality was good. Because when you sell to them, it's all about the offer. What does it give to the customer? That this enrich our portfolio, and is it value for money, and does it taste good? And we managed to do that. So for us, it's been very fortunate.
very good, yeah. And do you have events, cider-specific events? And can you tell us what those might be?
We have a few different festivals that we do, either with the natural wine side or with brewers.
Okay.
And we have one specific one that we organize, which is the Nordic Craft Cider Festival, where we bring producers from all over the Nordics to my parents' farm. And then we hang out there and have a festival for a few days.
To your parents' farm?
Yeah.
Nice. And what's the setup there? Is this like on a hillside or a big field, a tent?
Yeah, it's tents, and it's an awesome thing. It's one of the best things all year. And we also have, because it's far out on the countryside, there's not a lot of parking space, so in order to solve that, we rent a boat, a big
Of course you do.
That
Love
bring
it.
people in from the nearest city.
So a big old boat picks up somebody at what city would, for instance?
It's Strängnäs is the town that's close to us. So most people come by boat and just drop it off. And the festival is just right next to the lake, and it's
stunning.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
it is a beautiful. I'm biased, obviously, but it's a beautiful spot, and we've also been lucky with the weather these last few years. So
Good.
It's,
not like where we're in the ice storm now. So what month is that held?
July.
July, and a particular weekend, like the third weekend of July always, or is it?
It's the week. That's the first weekend in July. Yeah.
Okay, and the name of the festival is?
Nordic Craft Cider Festival.
Nordic Craft Cider Festival. Okay, and any other ones that you're doing besides that?
Not nationally. Then
okay.
So
that's the one.
That's the one.
And is it specifically to taste? Are there workshops? Is there anything?
That's an opportunity for people to discover cider. And you asked previously, and we didn't go into that, but you said, who are the customers?
Yes.
And that's one of the things I love with this. It's such a broad audience. You'll find people who just became old enough to start drinking alcoholic product to people who are coming with their strollers, and all walks of life. And it's I worked with wine, and I've been partly in the beer part, but I've never seen such a diverse crowd.
I think that's what cider really lends it to, because it's kind of, we've all grown up with the apple, so there's a certain kind of familiarity with it. And there's also like an ownership too. We're familiar with the apple, but we all feel it's part of our life, and so that never ends. It's like for the rest of our life. That's how we experience it here in the U.S. at least, and I imagine that's true in the rest of the world. And how nice is probably also, all kinds of drinkers, all gender. It just crosses all those lines, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Wow. That's wonderful. When people come to the Nordic Craft Cider Festival, are they staying in town then, or is it they get out on the boat and then go back the same day?
People go back, but all the producers stay there for the full weekend, so it's also a good party.
Sure. And is that producers outside of Sweden? Because there's not that many producers in Sweden, so you're bringing in...
No, it would be a very small festival with just Swedish producers, so we're bringing in from Finland, Norway, and the Baltics as well.
Is there any on-site where you could actually buy the product, or is it just tasting?
It's just tasting.
Yeah, because that's regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What are you hoping, or really, it's not just hoping, because you have to be actively involved. What kind of steps are being taken to kind of broaden that experience in Sweden? What are your hopes there? What are you actively involved in to keep the education up, or are there new offerings, or is it kind of just staying rock steady where you are?
Education is going to be a big thing that we need to get a bit more organized and sorted out, so people will be able to have access to education. So if you're starting out, when we started out, there was nothing to. I could talk to Andreas, but apart from that, there was nothing I could work with. So it's you basically had to find out yourself and use whatever you could find from other sources. We need to make that accessible and make it easy for people to start out, not only on the cider making side, but also when it comes to the financial side. So people can actually stay in business.
I see, yeah.
Because especially what we're seeing now, these times that we're in, it's hard times for people to stay in business. It's going to be easier to maintain and stay in business.
Yeah, absolutely. We see that globally. I feel, in my experience with cider for X amount of years, you have to first be a business person before you become a cider maker. You want to be the artist, and you've already changed that yourself from being a purist to now kind of broadening your scope on it. Otherwise, if you don't approach that, it's hard to stay afloat.
Yeah.
So what is your 5-year plan then for
the next 5 years?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Still try to broaden the audience, and from what we've seen, if you're into cider in Sweden, you are probably drinking our stuff and know who we are. So our challenge is to find new consumers and bring them in from other types of drinks.
And how do you do that? Because everybody now is bending their ear going, okay, that's exactly what we want to do. So what do you think?
We've been quite successful in both doing things with breweries and a bit with beer, and also on the wine side, work with grape skins, just to
co-ferments.
Yeah, and those things tend to bring people into the fold, because they try, because it's something that they think that they will like, because it reminds them of the other things that they like, and then they start by, this is not bad. Might try something else from that particular brand.
Nice.
And then we have them in our grasp.
Yeah, slowly wheel them in.
Yeah.
Now in the U.S., we see a lot of folks who are cider influencers, and there's a lot of buzz going on that. Folks kind of coming in and want to, enthusiasts who just want to go out and start helping promote. Do you have that in Sweden? Do you have folks who are writing about it and blogging or podcasting or anything?
Not cider in particular, but we've been warmly embraced from both the wine community and the beer community. So we are usually covered from both those ends, and especially the the journalist has been very helpful in spreading the word.
Sure, because journalists always like something new coming on the market too, and cider's well positioned for that to be the new, partner in the industry, whether it's crossover to beer or wine or spirits. So that would make sense to me. I like to go back to the cider that we're drinking because my palate's needed a little time to set into it. It's almost like caramelized apple. I'm kind of curious, how do you explain this profile?
Slight oxidation in it, for sure. But this one has, it's been in the can for quite some time, so it's not as crisp and fresh as it would be if it was vintage 23. No, this is 21.
21, okay. So what we would recommend with a cider in a can like this, especially if you're looking for like a low ABV or even a high ABV, is if it's in a can, don't put it on your shelf and save it for years because it's going to be changing. And that's why we're seeing a little bit probably a darker color here too than it was originally poured in. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about cider in Sweden?
You should come over and experience it. We are a young cider nation, but it's a really exciting time. I think we're kind of at the threshold where it's actually started to sip out in the general consciousness. It's not just among the geeks anymore. Most people are starting to know what cider is about and understand it different from the thing that they previously thought was cider.
That's good news for everybody to hear. It gives us hope for the future, doesn't it? And so we expect to be seeing you years from now kind of moving forward in your production. Is that your goal? Is this your long-range goal to stay in cider at this level with Pomologik?
Yeah, the revolution has just started. We have a long way to go, and I'm not going to sit it out. I want to see where we can bring this.
Well, thank you for taking the time today to speak on Cider Chat and lend us your story and bring us on the journey. And I want everybody to kind of imagine yourself, heading over to Sweden, taking a boat up to a cider festival on the side of the water and raising a glass of people. Like, what a beautiful journey to go on.
Thank you for taking the time.
I'm thinking right about now that some of you folks out there in Ciderville are going, wow, I didn't know that non-alcoholic cider was a happening thing. But indeed it is. I don't know what will happen. Like maybe the next generation will kind of oppose their parents and go back to really high alcohol. Who knows? It's just kind of like the evolution of different generations as they come along. There is a U.S. maker who is rolling out some non-alcohol cider, or he calls it alcohol-free cider, and you can follow him on Instagram. He's at farmer_Jonathan Q. I'll have a link in the show notes to Jonathan Mark's Instagram feed. I knew Jonathan when he was out here in Massachusetts working at Cider Hill, and they had an award-winning ice cider, and he was helping folks there. And then he moved out west, and now he's making what is called organic orchards. And I see a beautiful photo on Instagram. I'm looking at it right now. It's called Sparkling Apple Cider. It's called Autumn Rose Apple. And it's this beautiful bottle on the snow with a lovely rosé hue to it. And I know that he really is a lover of apples. So we have it in the U.S. It's happening as a trend here and obviously overseas too. Does that mean that cider with alcohol is going away? I want to say, I sure hope not, because those are really fun parties to go to, and the reason why I like hanging out in Ciderville. But, it's really all good. And truthfully, when I lead cider tours, I do try to get a bottle or two. Certainly, they do this very well in France. They always have fresh apple juice there to taste, which then is able to excite your palate before you actually taste the fermented product. I just love that. There's just so many ranges, and it's never going to get old with cider. Believe me, it will not. You can find links in the show notes at ciderchat.com for this here episode 399 of everything that we mentioned and more. So do check that out, and how cool, right? How cool all this stuff is going on. Speaking of Europe, I have another little piece, event happening. So let me take a little pause here, and we'll go to that next.
Dancing in the street.
For all the Dutch listeners out there in Ciderville and all the world travelers who find themselves in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, this coming March, specifically Friday night, March 8th, you can attend what is called Cider Salon. It's going to be the first ever taking place, so hopefully this will become an annual event. And all the makers listed that I see here are all from the Netherlands. In fact, this is being put on by one of our patrons, which is Elegas Cidery, and also a wine store called Aesop Wines. But I also see another patron on here too, our friend Marcel, whose cidery brand is called Die Gardener. Let me try that again, Marcel. Die Gardener, which means the gardener. Yes, the gardener. I've talked about Marcel before on the podcast because he shipped over some of his delicious cidery and also a spirit that he made with quince that, Marcel, honest to God, I still dream about till like the final sip, and even the bottle I keep around to smell it because it's that good. So that's just a little taste of what is in store for this cider salon. It's going to be taking place from 7 to 10 p.m. I just found out about it. I must admit to all my friends over there in the Netherlands, I'm kind of sad I wasn't invited. I see that Gabe Cook is going to be there. He's from the UK. So maybe if I grow a little mustache and wear a handlebar, next time I'll get invited to the cider salon. Okay, look, I don't mind promoting it, but come on, guys. Let's not just have it be a bro fest. Let's have it be a unifying fest. Most of these cideries, as far as I could tell, are all owned by men, and we need a little bit of women love over there because 51% of the population are women. That's just a plain fact. Do not leave that out. I'll be talking more about that coming up, I think, in my upcoming State of Cider. Stay tuned for that. Oh my God. Anyways, there are 10 cider makers, again, like I said, from the Netherlands. That's a 3-hour tasting. Look, the Dutch know how to party with the best of them. And the fact that this is going to be in Amsterdam, it's going to be really easy to get to. You can find out more by going to Elegas Cidery, their Instagram feed. You will find links in the show notes at ciderchat.com. So if you go to this year episode 399, you will see mentions in this chat, in this cider chat, and you'll see all the mentions with links to like the French Cider Tour, to this cider salon in Amsterdam, and the New York International Cider Competition, and more, along with a whole bunch of past episodes with Swedish cider makers. And I'm also going to be putting up all the past episodes I did with Dutch cider makers. Just to bring new listeners up to date, I traveled to the Netherlands for 10 years, always landing in Amsterdam, spending both time on the front side of my tour there and on the back side, and did a lot of work with the folks there for many, many years. So I really came to love the country quite a bit. And I think it was, I'm going to try to I think it was in 2016, that's right. I had a gathering. I put it out to all the makers at that time. And none of these makers listed here were around back then. As far as I know, I don't think they were back in 2016. Very, very few. So this is how quickly the Dutch cider industry has been growing, and you really have to associate that with the fact that they are so good at gardening. Oh my goodness, so good at that, right? And we see all the bulbs that go on there, all those beautiful daffodil gardens in Leiden, and I see there's now a cidery in Leiden, which is really cool. That's right outside of Amsterdam. Anywho, I held the first ever cider meetup in Amsterdam. And we had Margot from Utrecht. She has the Het Cider House. And I'm not recalling everybody right now. But anyways, there's episodes with that. And so I was really using it as a touchstone of like, holy crapola, like look how cider's going up around the world. So thrilled out of the moon to see this. And hopefully, if you're a Dutch listener out there and you want to hear more about like some of the history of your country around cider, you could tap into ciderchat.com. Just put in the little show notes, Netherlands or Netherlands with a D, and see what comes up. Again, there'll be links in the show notes to this here episode and also to Elegas Instagram feed so you could see how to get tickets. They're only €15 for a 3 hour tasting. And while there, you could get bottles to go. So that is a super win-win. Before we roll out of here, I want to put a little reminder in your little thinking cap there to check out the French Cider Tour. That's coming up September 22nd through the 28th of this year. Only 4 seats left as this is being published, but that could change any minute, so do not delay. And also, if this podcast is of value to you, if you like hearing these stories from around the world, getting tips, if having a search button at ciderchat.com to find out about so many different techniques in the world, about wild yeast, about orchard care, about apples, being connected to the wider world, and being connected to what I consider the world's global cider media, do consider becoming a supporter of Cider Chat. You could sponsor an episode like the New York International Cider Competition. You could hit the donate button at ciderchat.com. You could become a patron at the Cider Chat Patreon page. Or you could do something as easy as downloading a informational flyer all about Cider Chat and posting that at your tasting room. If you post it up at your tasting room, take a photo and send it this way. We will help cross-promote so that we could all keep cider going up. And with that, I leave you here. Next week on Cider Chat, we'll be hitting episode 400, so I will see you then. This is Rhea Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
We like cider. We like palms. We love orchards and having fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. We like cider, we like palms, we like orchards, having some fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Oh yes, we do. We like palms. Oh yes, we do. We love orchards, having some fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. Ba-da-da-dum. We like walking down the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Ba-da-da-dum. We like palms. Oh yes, we do. We like orchards, having some fun. Yeehaw!